Hey everybody, in the video today we're going to talk about how to write an executive summary. So you may be wondering, what exactly is an executive summary? Well, it's a very popular type of document written in the workplace, and it is a brief, condensed version of a longer report. So if you look at the name of it, executive summary, it's giving you a pretty good clue there. So the audience is typically or often executives or higher level leaders, and summary means that it's an abbreviated version of something that's longer. Sometimes it's also called an executive overview, a summary report, or a type of one-pager. And it's used to provide that high-level overview to the audience who probably won't read the whole report, not because they don't want to read the whole report, but because they don't have time to read the whole report. So they need just the high-level takeaways so that they can read it, be done, move on. And this can sometimes also function as a standalone document, depending on the situation, where you might be asked to just write the executive summary version and then not have to write a longer report. And the characteristics of the executive summary kind of depends on the situation, but some standard generalities here is that the audience is, whatever audience or audiences are intended for the report. And then more specifically, usually it's targeting those executives, those higher level leaders. And the purpose should be the same as the report, but it's in the format of a quicker read, a short overview. Instead of having the reader read a 100-page report, you're providing the same information, much higher level, very much fewer details, to say here's exactly what you need to know in just a few pages. And the length is generally 5% the length of the original document. And most often it's 1 to 2 pages in length, but generally less than 10, because at some point it becomes just a long regular report. So one of the key features here is that it is very short. And the content, again, same information as what's in the report. There shouldn't be anything new that is not in the longer report, but again, it's less detailed. And it will have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, just like the report will. And it can use tables and visuals, it doesn't have to, but again, the same technical writing conventions apply, that if it's useful to provide information in tables and it's visuals, then you would want to do that to the benefit of the reader. And if it is targeting executives, the overall focus may be skewed more toward focusing on what the findings mean for leadership. That isn't always the case, but it could be. So again, you might be specifically targeting those higher level leaders, and if so, they want to know more, like, what does this mean for me as a leader? As far as formatting an executive summary, you have pretty good amount of leeway here with your decision making. You just want to make good design decisions. It's almost always single spaced at 1.0. The formatting generally has paragraphs separated by a blank line space or an extra space in between the paragraphs versus indented paragraphs. And it's almost always located in the front of the report, in the front matter, but after the table of contents, so that the table of contents that says here's everything in this report can also mention the executive summary. So table of contents, any other front matter, the executive summary, and then eventually you get into the actual report. And the page numbers for the executive summary, typically it will have page numbers unless it is a one-pager standing alone. And those page numbers can be regular Arabic numerals, 1, 2, 3, or it could be the Roman numerals that indicate front matter, which are, lowercase I, and so on. And it often uses section headings and divisions, particularly if it's longer than 1 page, but even if it is only 1 page in length, if there's a way to break it up into sections and make it easier for readers to jump into the information and find what they're looking for, you would want to do that. And then you can, of course, use bullet points or numbered lists to help very quickly lay out information for your reader and make it a little bit more accessible for them. So let's take a look at some executive summaries. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at here is about global and regional sea rise in the US. And so it's put together by actually multiple authors working together, but it's put out into the world by the federal government. And you can see at the very top here, this is a standalone version of it. So this is the very first page, so this means it's not currently part of the report as a whole. It's just being published as a separate file that can be sent separately to individuals. So you can see this is only 3 pages long, and it starts at the top, executive summary. This report and accompanying data set from the U.S. sea level rise and coastal flood hazard scenarios and tool interagency task force provide one, so on and so on. So it's saying here's what it's covering. The report will be a key tactical input for the stakeholders. And then they do a good job here of pulling out what their key messages or their key takeaways are from the report itself. So the whole report is going to be going into a lot more detail, but there are a couple messages here they want to really isolate and make available for people who are reading only the executive summary as well. So key message number 1 right here, and then they have some bullet points about it. Key message number 2, and then they have some bullet points. And key message number 3, and some bullet points. And then finally, key message number 4, and some bullet points. And so the way this is set up, you've got the title of the document, you've got some paragraphs, and then you start having section breaks. The titles are just key message 1, key message 2, and so on. And so altogether, this is just a little over 2 pages in length, and it is part of a much larger report, this report. So for comparison, which one would you rather read? A slightly over 2-page report or a 111-page report? So I don't know about you, but I'm not an intended audience for this report. So I would definitely, if I'm going to read anything, want to read the executive summary, and that's it. But just to show you what it looks like when it's part of a larger report, here is the full-length report. So it has the actual title of the report at the top, Global and Regional Sea Level Rise Scenarios for the United States. And you have all of the authors and people who worked on it. Then you get into the table of contents where you can see the executive summary and that it is on page 12 of the front matter. And we're going to keep going. And then you have the list of figures saying here's what each figure is in the report and a description of it. And then a list of tables. Here's a description of what each table is, where it's located, and what's in it for the whole report. And then finally we get to the executive summary that we were just looking at separately. It is on page 12 of the front matter, and you can see it's the same exact thing we were just looking at. And when that is done, it rolls right into the beginning of the actual report, section 1, introduction of the whole report. And this is 111 pages to get through, which it's having trouble even loading. It's such a big file. So obviously, as a non-target reader where I don't have to read this, I just came across it, I would definitely prefer to read only the executive summary. However, if I were a leader working with this group, I would probably also only want to read the executive summary. The next example we have is another one from the U.S. government. It's from the Office of Personnel Management, and it's about Strategic Sustainability Performance Plan. It's a mouthful. So you can see this is the full report. It's 75 pages long. And again, we get to the table of contents and it says the executive summary is page 4. So continue on, they have a policy statement. And then we get to the executive summary. And they have section divisions with section headings, so you can see what all of these paragraphs are covering. Vision for sustainability at OPM, leadership and implementation, performance review, they have goals, so goals and then a lower level breakdown here, scope 1, 2, 3, goal 2, goal 3, goal 4, goal 5, goal 6, goal 7, goal 8, goal 9, and 10. Then we have a little information about progress on administrative priorities. And finally, we get to the end of the executive summary. And so this executive summary is a little over 5 pages in length, which is quite hefty. It is part of a 75-page report, but it still is quite detailed for that. And then we jump into the actual report. So the real takeaways here, you're summarizing a longer report and you need to keep it fairly short. Most of the time these are one page to 2 pages long. Sometimes it's longer. Really long reports, you look at it typically in percentages, like 5% of the overall length of the report. And you are not writing in as much detail as the whole report has. You just don't have the time and the space to get into those details. They're in the longer report anyway. So you just take the very high level takeaways that the reader needs. And if you are actually targeting leadership, consider it from the angle of what do these leaders need to know. All right, thanks for listening.